Lorgar Aurelian is one of the most important, but also the most misunderstood characters in all of Warhammer 40k. Now the first heretic isn't just his title, it's also many people's favorite book in all the heresy. Honestly, that's a fair shout. Me personally still it's no fear. But regardless of whether you love or hate the Lord of the 17th, you have to admit, he is an incredibly pivotal part of the heresy. Without him, the heresy changes completely. But a lot of people still don't give Lorgar the credit that he's due. If you've been around the community long enough, you'll hear things like, oh, Lorgar's pathetic, Lorgar's nothing, Lorgar's useless, Lorgar's lame, he's the worst Primarch, he's terrible, he's god-awful, he's all that. And truth be told, I was someone who thought like that for the longest time, until I actually looked into it. And lo and behold, like everything when it comes to Warhammer 40k, when I looked into the more deeper meanings and the actualities of the lore, my whole perspective on it changed dramatically. Cause it turns out, Lorgar is not the worst Primarch, but rather, he's the best. In fact, Lorgar is the only Primarch who can objectively be said to have won or succeeded in the heresy as a whole. A bold claim, I know, especially with all the hate that the word-bearers and their Primarch get. But I've read plenty of stuff about Lorgar, and I've included even more of it in this video. And I'm confident, ladies and gentlemen, that by the end of this video you will agree with me that Lorgar Aurelian is actually one of the best Primarchs, rather than one of the worst. Salutations Rangers, my name is General Bradley 101, and whilst many of you know me for being the Salamander guy, today I'm donning on a different hat. Because today I'm not talking about the Sons of Vulcan, but rather, today I'll be speaking in defense of Lorgar Aurelian. But without any further ado, let's get on with today's video. This video can be divided up into 4 different sections. Each one of them holds a main point that many people seem to forget about Lorgar, or they just never knew in the first place. And that's rather important when you consider that these are very important parts to Lorgar's character. But, point number 1, Lorgar is honest. And I know a lot of you are very confused by that statement. He's the Primarch of Chaos, Brad. How on earth can he be honest? Chaos is lying, that's his whole shtick. Well yes, he's indeed the chosen herald of Chaos Undivided, he didn't always start out like that. Again, when dealing with Lorgar, and most things in 40k to be frank, what you need to understand is the difference between what is interpreted versus what is written. Many people interpret that Lorgar is the champion of Chaos. We know that Chaos is untrustworthy, which is true, but that means that we then infer that Lorgar is also untrustworthy. And if he's untrustworthy now, and that's what he dedicates his life to, he must have always been untrustworthy. But that's not how Lorgar is written. Most people think that when Lorgar said, all I ever wanted was the truth, that's him being facetious, it's him being cunning, it's him being a snake, it's him being an idiot. Whatever type of colorful adjective you want to give to the Primarch of the 17th Legion. But in reality, it's just him being honest. Lorgar was aware that there were gods. Or so his faith told him, but he was also aware of his father. All he ever wanted to do was follow his faith. Faith in his father, but then eventually that then led to chaos. And Lorgar was always honest about what he wanted. When he was with Corferon, he didn't just acquiesce to the teachings of the faith, he spoke his mind with honesty, and that earned him beatings and beratings of every variety. When eventually he became a man and entered into the auditoriums of his world, he still spoke for what he believed in, what he thought, that there were no 4 gods, but one golden giant who ruled. Even when after all this happened, there was devastation untold and a civil war that brought a planet to heal, still, Lorgar preached that there was one god. When he met that god and that god rebuked him, Lorgar still preached what he believed in, his honesty. And while yes, you may call it delusion, you may call it idiocy, you may call it whatever you wish, the man was honest. He didn't try and go ifs, ands, buts or maybes, he didn't play the political game. He truly believed that the Emperor was a god. So what did he do? He preached that the Emperor was a god, to everyone, be it Primarch, Space Marine, normal Imperial, or to the God Emperor himself. He preached that he was indeed that, the God Emperor of all mankind. And it didn't matter who said what, when or where, Lorgar believed it, and thus he acted like it was real. Even when he falls from the Emperor's graces and he becomes a servant of Chaos, yes, he does indeed hide that from the Emperor. Yes, he does indeed do the betrayal of Calth. But whenever Lorgar interacts with anyone, be they loyalists or Chaos, he simply speaks the truth. There is time upon time where he has to interact with his fellow Primarchs of the Chaos variety, and he speaks to them openly and honestly, and they respond with confusion or ridicule. Such as when he believes that Horus is losing the god's favor, so he speaks to his brother Fulgrim and tells him the truth. Horus will not be able to see this through, so someone else must take the reins. Even when he speaks to loyalists, he only ever tells them the truth. Now, while said truth is not always poised correctly, although when him and Rabuta are having that conversation aboard their bridges, just before the Celt betrayal, he may be a little bit rambling and raving, but he's still speaking the truth. You'll notice he never lies to Rabute. He says that there are gods that are not the Emperor. He says that Horus has fallen. He says that other legions have fallen. He says that there is a war to come. All of it sounds crazy, all of it is delivered with way too much smugness, but it's all honest. There's not a single lie there. Throughout the entirety of the heresy and even after it, Lorgar has always been honest. I mean, hell, it was him who told Khan about Erebus. Now granted, he had more than one reason to do that to Erebus, because fuck Erebus, thank you very much, but he was still honest. Okay Brad, I hear you say, sure, but there were so many other Primarchs who were honest, but not as honest as him. You know, you consider some of the most honest Primarchs ever, Dawn, Sanguinius, Guilliman, Vulcan. All of them have glaring instances where they straight up just lie. Now granted, there may be good reasons for it, but they still lie. And hold on to me here, because this plays a pivotal part in the next topic that we're going to cover. Sanguinius lies about his legion. He lies about the blood curse and the genetic defect. Dawn lies about the defense of the Imperial Palace, blatantly through his teeth. When everything is going very, very bad, Dawn still covers up, says that everything is right as rain. Rabuta Guilliman time and time again wants to have a proper empire, he wants everything to be in place, but he ignores some of the most glaring issues going on right now. When he has his own empire of Ultramar, he ignores that things are not being done correctly, such as the reforms of his father not being fully implemented because of a lack of imperial oversight. And when you have Imperium Secundus, he ignores that there are roving bands of traitors running around, declaring that the war is over and the Shadow Crusade is finished, even when it's not. Vulcan gets resurrected, but he doesn't tell his sons. Instead, he doesn't gather what of his legions left and travel through the webway. He only takes the 3 that so happen to found him and just pops out of nowhere. Even when he's on Terra, he hides himself from the fact. Having another Primarch on a field of battle is such a massive morale boost, yet he still hit it. Now I know there's a lot of you who are clawing at the keyboard right now, but don't worry, I haven't forgotten. Each and every one of these men had a valid reason to do so. Sanguinius knew that his legion had such a terrible reputation as flesh eaters. He also knew the way propaganda works. If anything got out that the Blood Angels, one of the greatest legions, were bloodthirsty murderers who drank the blood of innocents, that would ruin him and his legion, and possibly incur the fate of the 2nd and the 11th. Rogal Dorn had no other option. What was he supposed to tell the Emperor? Yes, the war is over, we're losing. Morale at that point was the most fragile and most important it had ever been. He couldn't afford to be honest, because if he did, everything would have come crashing down like a house of cards. Rabute did not ignore his father's reforms. He wanted to do them. In fact, he planned to do them after the Great Crusade, but he couldn't, because he had to prosecute worlds. That was the prime directive at the time. He had a choice: complete the reforms or prosecute the Great Crusade, and he knew what would happen if he slowed down. Even during Imperial Secundus, he believes that Terra might have fallen, therefore he needs to unite the Imperium underneath something strong. The fact of the matter is, the Primarchs and the bulks of their fleets were gone. So yeah, it's over, everything is okay. He needed to unite the Imperium to prevent it from falling apart and ready it in case the traitors actually decided to attack. Vulcan, he loved his sons, but he knew they had just finally gotten over the pain, grief, and anguish that was Istavan 5. All of a sudden, just to come back and reignite all that? They didn't deserve that. Also, he was supposed to take what? His 700-800 sons through the portal? Have how many of them die through God Almighty knows what and just end up on Terra? And when on Terra, he realized he could come forward. But then that means the enemy would know as well. He would be the secret life ward of the Emperor. His duty demanded silence, despite what his heart may say. And so, he lied. All of these Primarchs lied, but they lied for good reason. Lorgar, though, he doesn't do that. Even when he should lie, even when politics demands that he does, even when common sense demands that he does, he is unabashedly honest. He is naive, like a child. If I tell them the truth, everything will be alright. He doesn't understand people. He doesn't understand how they work. He just assumed that if everything went right, that was because the truth was told. And in doing so, he would end up damning his entire legion and eventually his soul. And all that happened because Lorgar is honest, but honest to a fault. And now we come to the most iconic moment in all of Lorgar's and, well, the 17th Legion's history, the moment that truly began the heresy, some argue, that being the raising of Monarchia. But to truly understand why that happened, we need to understand the Emperor and his goal. And ultimately, the Emperor wanted to guide all of us into the webway and prevent the psychic awakening of our race, Allah, the same psychic awakening of the Eldari that birthed the god Slanesh. The Emperor demanded that something like that never happen to us. Taken from the Master of Mankind. Everything that has happened will happen again. It is the way of things. Yet humanity's death will eclipse the Eldari's annihilation tenfold. For we are evolving into a far more psychically powerful race. Uncontrolled psychic energy will tear reality apart. The warped entities will feed on the carcass of the galaxy. There must be control, and control must be maintained. Control, Ra repeated. The scale of such ambition. The necessity of it, lest mankind face a harsher extinction than the Eldari. Their souls shine bright within the warp, drawing the predations of the beasts within its tides. Soon, every human soul will become a beacon of fire. The Emperor knew what was coming, so it did not matter how, what, when, where, or why. He would ensure all of humanity would be subjugated. And he lied, he schemed, he politicked, he did every damn thing under the sun. And it didn't matter who you were, even if you were one of his sons. The one son who truly knew what you were. If you didn't do what he said, if you didn't help him, if you were a hindrance to him uniting all of humanity, well then, something had to be done. An example had to be made. And what an example. What a terrible example it was. Lorgar looked to the sixth figure, who was just a man. Despite the vigor of youth, age-aligned showed time's track across features that were both stern and gentle, all at once. The man's appearance depended entirely on which facet of his face one focused upon. He was a tired, aging man, and a heroic statue immortalized in life's prime. He was a young, grimacing warlord with cold eyes, and a confused elder on the edge of weeping. Lorgar focused on those eyes now, seeing the warmth of love with the benevolence of trust. The man blinked slowly, and his eyes opened again. They were cold with the frigid touch of disappointment, blending into the ice of disgust. Lorgar, the man said. His voice was quiet, but strong, lost in the indecipherable vista between hatred and kindness. Father, Lorgar said to the Emperor of Mankind. Sight returned, banishing the grotesque feeling of helplessness. Such emotion was anathema, prickling at Argiltal's skin with 1,000 insect legs. He managed to look through his dimmed visor, seeing a towering figure deep in a corona of agonizing white light. Around the figure, cloaked and gold-armored warriors hefted unique spears with practiced ease. Each one of them was the size of an Astartes, and no Astartes could fail to recognize them. Custodes, he managed to speak through gritted teeth at the light's intensity. It's the... Zafin stammered. I know who it is. Argiltal exhaled the words through clenched teeth, and that's when the voice hit him. Hit them all, in a wave of invisible force. Kneel. It whispered with the power of a hammer to the forehead. There was no resisting. Muscles acted instantaneously, no matter how many hearts fought to obey. Argiltal was one of them. This was not fealty, no worship, no service. This was slavery, and his instincts rebelled at the enforced devotion, even as he obeyed it. 100,000 word-bearers kneeled in the dust of the perfect city, rendered prone by imperial decree. A legion was on its knees, Lorgar looked over his shoulder, taking in the seascape of his kneeling warriors. Fire flickered in his eyes when he returned to the gaze of the Emperor. "Father," Lorgar began, but the man shook his head. "Kneel," he said. His timeless face was framed by dark hair, the same color as Lorgar's facial stubble. Like father, like son. "What?" the Primarch asked. He looked past the Emperor to Guilliman, straight-backed and proud. When he returned his gaze to his father, he wiped his eyes with his soft fingertips, as if to clear some lingering phantasma. "Father?" "Kneel, Lorgar." Argel watched with clenched teeth as Lorgar lowered himself to one knee. His first instincts were fading now, replaced by reason and the comfort of faith. It was only right to kneel before the God Emperor. He willed his hearts to slow, despite the implied insult of his deity impelling him to abase himself. The rebellious anger resurfaced in a stinging adrenaline flood only a moment later, as he watched the Ultramarines rise to their feet at Guilliman's command. He could see them watching, feeling their eyes boring in him as he knelt before them. One Legion's warrior stood in the Emperor's presence with a Primarch's blessing, while another was on its knees in the bones of a dead city. It was a moment that cast a dozen reflections, for the word-bearers had mirrored this action many times before, under alien skies. Legions laying claim to less discipline or grace might beat their chests and howl at the moon upon achieving compliance. But among the sons of Lorgar, victory was to be cherished in reverence and dignity. The triumphant warriors would kneel in the heart of the fallen city and heed the words of their chaplains. The rite of remembrance, a time to recall the sacrifices of lost brothers and reflect upon one's place in the world. Argel felt sweat painting cold trails down his temples and cheeks. Trembling threatened to take hold as his traitorous muscles bunched, locking in painful cramps. The joints of his armor thrummed with the unreleased strength, forcing him to endure this perversion of the Legion's most sacred ritual. The voice returned. This time, it gave the answers that the 17th Legion so craved. Lorgar looked into his father's unknowable face as the Emperor spoke. "You are a general, my son, not a high priest. You were created for war, for conquest, to reunite the human race under the aegis of truth." "No." The Emperor closed his eyes, and an image of Monarchia, as it had been, bright and glorious, filled Lorgar's mind. "This is worship. This is a poison to truth. You speak of me as a god, and forge worlds that suffer under one lie that has brought humanity to the edge of extinction time and time again. The people are joyous. The people are deceived. The people will burn when their faith is proven false. My worlds are loyal." Lorgar was no longer kneeling. He rose to his feet, his voice rising with him. "My legion shapes the most ferociously loyal worlds in your Imperium."
"It is not my Imperium."
The words thudded into Argel mind like a stream of bolter shells. For a brief, hateful moment, he glanced at his retinal display to check his life signs. He was certain he was dying, and had he already not been on his knees, he would have fallen to them by now. "It is the Imperium of Man, the Empire of Humanity, enlightened and saved by the truth. I speak no lies. Lorgar." "I will not be silenced because you do not like the melody of a single word. In your grip, 1,000 worlds turn. By your will, 1,000,000 vessels sail the void. You are immortal, undying, all-seeing, all-knowing. Everything that transpires across this creation is known to you. Father, you are a god in all but name. All that remains is to confess to it."
"Lorgar!"
The voice came with a wall of pressure now, dense and all too tactile. It pounded into Argel like a miasma of engine wash, heating his armor and throwing him to the ground. Around him, he could see his brothers sprawling, their armor skidding across the dust, defiant in the cyclone of unseen energy. scrolls of scripture ripping from his armor. Lorgar raised his hand to point at his father. "You are a god. Say the words and end the lie." The Emperor shook his head, not in defeat, but calm defiance. "You are blind, my son. You cling to ancient perceptions and endanger us all with them. Let this end, Lorgar. Let this end with you heeding my words." The psychic wind died with a peal of thunder. Lorgar stood where he was, trembling for reasons his warriors could not discern. Blood ran from one ear, running in a slow trail down his tattooed neck. "I am listening, father," he said. The 7th captain hauled himself back to his feet, stumbling once and righting himself before his armor stabilizers needed to compensate. He was one of the first word-bearers to rise. The others still struggled, shivering on hands and knees, or were locked in muscle spasms, their twitching limbs disturbing the dust. Arjatal helped Safin up, receiving a grunt of thanks.
Word bearers, hear me well. You, among all my legions, are guilty of failure. You number more warriors than any other, exempting the 13th. Yet your conquests are the slowest, and your victories ring hollow.
It hurt too much to look directly at the figure of gold-white light, haloed by corpuscating psychic fire, telling them with words of thunder that all their lives had been wasted.
You linger on compliant worlds for years after the final victory, driving the populace into the worship of false faith, seeding cults of the naive and the deceived, erecting monuments to lies. All you have done in the Great Crusade is for naught. While others succeed and bring prosperity to the Imperium, you alone have failed me.
Lorgar stepped back from the figure, only now raising his arms to ward off its radiance.
Wage war as you were created to do. Serve the Imperium as you were born to do. Take with you the lesson learned here this day. You kneel in the ruination found at the end of a false path. Let this be your legion's rebirth.
Father. But it was spoken to emptiness. Another sonic boom of displacing air heralded the Emperor's return to orbit. The Ultramarines remained, watching the kneeling, trembling word-bearers in absolute silence. The custodian stood alongside Guilliman, while the Primarch conferred with their apparent leader, whose helm bore a red crest to match his cloak. Arjatal saw Corferan rising with painful slowness, despite his Terminator armor making the task easier with dent joints and snarling servos. Neither Arjatal nor Zafin offered to help, both of them made for the Primarch. While the word-bearers struggled to their feet, Lorgar crashed to his knees at last. The Emperor's golden sun stared at the surrounding city, as if he recognized none of it, with no idea how he reached this place. Dead eyes too cold to cry looked out upon his shamed legion, and the rubble of the lesson they needed to learn. Arjatal reached him first. Instinct compelled him to remove his own helm, and he disengaged the seals around his armored collar, standing unmasked before his Primarch. "Aurelian," he said. For the first time, Arjatal breathed the scorched air of Monarchia, unaltered by merciful filters. It reeked of the oil burned in 1,000 years of industry. Zafin's earlier comment was haunting in its truth. It smelled like they'd lost a war. He dared not touch Lorgar. With his hand outstretched, just short of resting on the Primarch's shoulder, he whispered his father's name. Lorgar turned to regard him, his eyes lacking even a shadow of recognition. "Aurelian," Arjatal said again. He glanced at the staring figures of Guilliman and the custodians. "My Primarch, come. We must return to our ships." For the first time, his hand rested on Lorgar's armored shoulder, where a scroll of scripture once hung. Ignoring his touch, Lorgar threw his head back and roared. The captain gripped the Primarch's golden pauldron, doing all he could to keep the demigod steady. Lorgar screamed, deep and low and long, at the uncaring sky. It lasted longer than mortal lungs would allow. When the anguished cry finally faltered, he ran his bare fingers along the broken ground. With a shaking hand, the Primarch smeared black ash across his face, tarnishing his features with the powdered bones of the perfect city. Zaphan's voice was low and urgent. The Ultramarines are bearing witness to this. We must get him to safety. Lorgar's mask of ashes was already streaked with tears that cut trails into the dust. The two warriors renewed their grips, trying to bring the golden giant to his feet. For a wonder, instead of the expected slackness in his limbs, Lorgar spat on the ground and rose with their aid. Both of them feeling the trembling in Lorgar's limbs. Neither of them spoke of it. Guilliman. The Primarch spoke his brother's name with an envenomed tongue. A shrug of his shoulders pushed Argel and Zaphan aside. Immediately forgotten, emotion flooded back into Lorgar's eyes. His gaze was locked on Guilliman, who returned it. Passionless, where Lorgar was inflamed. Does it please you? The word-bearer lord sneered. Does it please you to witness my shame? Guilliman didn't answer, but Lorgar would not back down. Does it please you? Do you enjoy seeing my efforts reduced to ash while our father favors you? Guilliman breathed slowly, utterly unfazed. He spoke as if no question had been asked. Our father entrusted me to inform you of one last matter. Then speak it and be gone. Lorgar reached for his crozius on the ground and dragged it up from the ash. Dust rained from its spiked head. These 5 warriors of the Legiones Custodes. They are not alone. 15 more remain on my flagship. Our father has ordered them to accompany you, brother. Argel closed his eyes at this final indignity. After kneeling in the ashes of failure, after being told by the Emperor that all their achievements were worthless, now this? Lorgar laughed, the sound ripe with derision. His face was still smeared with dust. I refuse. They are not needed. Our father believes otherwise. These warriors are to be his eyes as your legion rejoins the Great Crusade. And does our father set hounds to watch over you? Do they reside in your precious empire of Ultramar, whispering of your every move? I see the shadow of a smile on your lips. The others do not know you as I do, brother. Our sons may not see the amusement in your eyes, but I am not blind to such nuance. You have always possessed an active imagination. Today has proven that. My devotion is my strength. Lorgar clenched his perfect teeth. You have no heart and no soul. A snort blackened his angelic features with a disgusted twist. I pray that one day you feel as I feel. Would you smile if one of Ultramar's worlds died in fire? Tarantus, Espandor, Calth. You should return to your fleet, brother. Guilliman uncrossed his arms, revealing a golden aquila emblazoned across his chest. The eagle's spread wings glinted with reflective sunlight. You have much work to do. The blow came from nowhere. In its wake, the air rang with the echo of metal on metal, the clashing chime of a great cathedral bell. It was almost beautiful. The 13th Primarch lay in the dust, surrounded by his warriors. None present had ever witnessed such a thing. Argeltal's bolter was raised, amid the ranks of Ultramarines who mirrored the gesture in kind. 100 gun barrels leveled at 100,000. The 7th captain needed 3 attempts to form his words. Hold your fire. Do not fire unless fired upon. Lorgar rested his immense crozius mace on his golden shoulder. His eyes flickered with the uncertain emotion as he bared his teeth at the fallen Lord of Macragge. You will never mock me again, brother. Is that understood? Guilliman's rise was slow, almost hesitant. The golden eagle on his breastplate was split, a valley crack running through its body. You go too far, a softer voice said. Malcador, First Lord of Terror, still clutched his staff. It was all that kept him standing. You go too far. Be silent, worm. The next time you bleed my patience dry, I will do more than slap you aside. Guilliman was on his feet now. He turned an expressionless face back to his brother. Is your tantrum concluded, Lorgar? I must return to the crusade. Come, my son. Corferan's corpse sneer was directed at Guilliman, even as his words were meant to the Primarch. Come, we have much to discuss. Lorgar exhaled, and not at once. His anger was fading, and no longer offered a shield against the shame. Yes, back to the ships. The ships. All companies, return to orbit. Yes, First Captain. Argilton replied with the others. By your word. Lorgar was honest, and that honesty cost him everything. And the worst part about it all? Lorgar was right. The Imperium works on lies and politics. Lorgar, however, is the only one who does not. Most people have this image that the Great Crusade was a time of revival, of rejuvenation, that it was the greatest thing humanity had ever seen. It was something better, something different, something that humanity could truly hope for. But the Great Crusade was not that. The Great Crusade was a promise, the promise of prosperity, the promise of a return to goodness. That's all it was. A promise that by the end of it, humanity would be good. But in reality, it did not bring any goodness. The Great Crusade was war, war on a galactic scale, war that destroyed and ravaged countless civilizations. The Emperor wanted to usher us into the webway. There would we become perfect. He never said anything about it being perfect right now, and it was not. Most people believe that the Emperor was uncompromising, but again, that's partly true. In matters of the heretic, the Xenos, the alien, or the mutant, yes, the Emperor brook to no quarter, but when it came to normal human mortality, and all the wretched vile evil that brings, you best believe the Emperor made deals. The Emperor did not care about slavery, he did not care about rights, he did not care about morality, he did not care about understanding, he did not care about literature, he did not care about civilization, he only cared for compliance. And so many Primarchs had to come to terms with that. There were many Primarchs who disagreed with how the Emperor wanted to do things. Many Primarchs. Corvus Corax was a liberator, a freedom fighter. So much of the heresy is him having to struggle with the fact that he was now an enforcer of a tyrant. A tyrant. He had once vowed to cast low such creatures, and now he propped them up. Jagatai Khan fought wars upon wars so that his people would be free, free of domination, free of being controlled, freedom to do whatever they desired. Self-determination was the greatest gift that humanity had, and he believed that. But he was forced to become a general for one who wanted control over all, something that by his very definition he was abhorred to. But still, he had to serve. Perturaba was an architect. He wanted naught but to build beauty. He wanted to craft cities of both purpose but also splendor. He never wanted to be used as a warlord. But he too submitted to the Emperor, and became the grinding machinations of sieges and death, the lord of the corpse grinders. Each and every Primarch yielded to the Emperor. All but one. Lorgar. Lorgar did not play the game of politics. Lorgar did not make compromises. Lorgar was honest, and in his honesty he dealt truly, if naively, if stupidly, but truthfully and honestly nonetheless. The Imperium was so fragile that the moment there was a single fracture, it fell apart, because very few in charge believed in the dream. In truth, many who were in charge, planetary governors, generals, lords, the Primarchs themselves, simply did it because it was the only choice. It was the expedient choice, or it was simply the choice to give them power. Very, very, very few people truly believed in it. Instead, they played the game of politics. Ifs, ands, whens, yeses, nos, backroom deals, frontroom deals, spectacle shows, and everything in between. All of them played this great game, where the weapons were not bolt and blade, but rhetoric and perception, technicalities and wonders. That is the game that was played. A game that Lorgar refused to play. A prime example is the Lectitio Divinitatus. Many believe that it is the written work of Lorgar. This is a lie. Lorgar wrote the books of Lorgar, a treatise which he himself composed. The Lectitio Divinitatus is a mixture of Lorgar's writings, taken by Erebus and corrupted, then taken by the Ecclesiarchy and the Anchorite, and reiterated and reinterpreted time and time and time again. The words of Lorgar were lost. The Imperium knows what the Anchorite is. The Imperium knows that the arch-heretic wrote this. The Imperium knows it all. But at the end, politics compels them to accept it as a technicality. Primarch written hands, but what Primarch wrote it? None say. And over the 10,000 years, it has only gotten worse. Even Guilliman himself cannot overcome this. He is forced to recognize that what is before him is not a work of his brother, though it holds resemblances. It is something twisted, mutilated, and changed. But still, he must come to terms with it. Guilliman's every thought was directed towards his stasis unit, given to him by Yasili Sulmanaya, and the book it now contained. For now, the container was closed. Nothing more sinister than a wooden box, decorated by a plain pattern on the lid. But it dominated his desk. He was reminded of the box of woes from the ancient legend no one in the current age remembered. He debated opening the box and reading the book inside. There will be no hope beneath it, he warned himself. Guilliman had never read the book in the box. He had refused at the time it was published, having never made the same decision about any other book. He had made a public point of ignoring this one. Back in the Age of Enlightenment, Guilliman had always thought himself as one of the more reasoned Primarchs. He had been a man of learning. Rationality was his first and last resort. And yet, he had ostentatiously condemned this work. Why? He had done so to please the Emperor, as he did everything back then. But that was not the only reason. He should have made up his own mind. He should have read the arguments and addressed them, not dismissed them. The creed of the Imperial truth he stuck to so hard was just that. A creed. It was flawed, and in large part, based on a lie. His refusal was a calculated insult. Lorgar and he had never seen eye to eye. Guilliman was a rationalist. Lorgar was a quester after metaphysical truths. Faith was his mode of thought, and Guilliman had disdained it. The word-bearer's way of war annoyed him. How petty. He known by swearing his brother's beliefs so bluntly, he had hastened the end of everything the Emperor believed in. Professed to believe in, Guilliman corrected himself. He never had the chance to speak with the Emperor about the truth. The war prevented it, and when it was over, the Emperor was gone beyond communication. Only that one time upon his return to Terra had Guilliman been in his presence and received something more from his creator than utter silence. He thought back on the meaning as he often did, still unable to reconcile what he thought he had seen with what should have been possible. Maybe, he thought, I did not read it because I was afraid. Lorgar was right. How can I know without reading it? He did not care that he had wronged Lorgar, but that he had abandoned his own intellectual rigor. He had been a fanatic as much as Lorgar was, after his own fashion. Theoretical, I must set this right. Practical, I must read it. Guilliman flipped open the lid of the box. The book was slender, and rested inside a hollow compartment bathed in the still light of the stasis field. It was so old, almost as old as him. Together, they were relics of another age, time-lost things. In appearance, the book had nothing that suggested the power it possessed, but it was powerful, and so disruptive that Guilliman himself had banned it after Horus's betrayal. Every copy that could be found was burned, its words deemed tainted with a traitor's lie. It was expunged from history, scraped out of the record. People had died to protect it. The faithful called them martyrs, but the Imperial cult had been small and ridiculous, and he had ignored it. By then, the damage had been done. The thoughts were out, and a mimetic virus spread from mind to mind. It had no cure. The writings in this book, the thoughts and beliefs of an arch-traitor, were the foundation of an imperial cult. He speculated if the high priests of the ecclesiarchy were aware of this fact. Often the book was poorly printed, dashed out of underground presses in furtive acts of Zamadant. This one was finally made, the property of a rich man or woman. That could have explained why it had survived. The lonely title was emblazoned on the corner, in flaking gold leaf stamped into the light brown leather. There was no author's credit. The skin oils of its owner stained the lower right-hand corner of the cover, the sole trace of a person 10 millennia dead. The book had been read many times. Guilliman wondered what manner of person they had been. Imagining was a fruitless exercise that yielded an infinity of theoretical with no result in practicals. A waste of time. He cut dead the train of thought. Imperial Gothic had evolved since the book was written. Even the highest, most ossified form had been dragged out of shape by the tides of change. The script on the book was of the oldest kind. Reading it brought a sudden flush of memories of the Primarch. They intensified Guilliman's feelings of displacement, and he almost abandoned the idea in favor of destroying the book and its box. He did not. His finger depressed the hidden stud, shutting off the stasis field. He set at the book once more. He picked it up. The leather was dry and flaking. The paper smelled as old paper does. A fusty sharpness. The smell of hidden wisdom and dying memories. 10,000 years after, Lorgar Aurelian set pen to paper to create this tract. Guilliman began to read it. "Rejoice, for I bring you glorious news. God walks among us." So ran the first two lines of the Lectitio Divinitatus. As Guilliman would read, he would soon realize that this had glimpses of his brother, but it was altogether something different. So too his High Gothic had been changed over the 10,000 years into something strangled, mutated, deformed. So too had the words of Lorgar. Thus Guilliman did not know the words of Lorgar, his true words. And in truth, no one besides the Primarch himself had ever really known them. And even then, what was it that he said? In truth, we will never know, but we do know. He did not mince his words. He did not care for political concerns. It was straightforward, and it was honest, like a child writing a letter to a parent. Lorgar believed in the cause. Regardless of whether he served the Emperor or the ruinous powers, or whether even the priests of Colchis, Lorgar believed everything. Many other Primarchs did not. Many other Primarchs chafened and chased. Many other Primarchs did politics. Many other Primarchs lied. Many other Primarchs hid their beliefs. Lorgar, however, he believed with his whole heart what he was doing was right. He believed in the God Emperor of mankind. He believed that every single thing that he did was something that was to bring forth humanity's greatest triumph. Whether it be writing the Book of Lorgar, whether it be slowly converting world after world, destroying their culture and religion and replacing it with what he believed to be right, whether it was denying the Emperor or trying to convince his brothers, whether it was simply just staying in the dirt and ash begging the Emperor to admit what he had always known. The Emperor was a god. Lorgar believed everything, and even when the Emperor shattered his belief, he would be introduced by another. Via Erebus he would learn of the powers of chaos, and he threw it in wholeheartedly, He wasn't someone doing this out of despair. Indeed, many people often mistakenly think that Lorgar fell to chaos because he had nowhere else to turn to, that a broken man bereft of faith chose devils instead of gods. But that is not true. Lorgar saw them for what they were. They were gods, and they were truth. For they spoke truth, whereas the Emperor did not. The Emperor lied. The Emperor was a god. The Emperor knew about gods. He knew about religion. It was all true, but he held it. Why? He would never tell Lorgar. So when presented with someone who lies and keeps truth, you then meet someone, multiple people, who are honest. Well, who's the devil, and who's the god then? Or is it not good to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? The gods of chaos did that, whereas the Golden Lord did not. Time and time again during the heresy, Lorgar begins his moves. He is the first to move, the first to act. He operates and acts with such passion and proficiency that many are surprised. And he never falters. He never does it for his own goals, for his own deeds, his own misgivings. He always puts chaos first. He is a servant of the gods, not himself. He doesn't care about anything but ensuring that the will of the gods is done. That is what Lorgar is, and that is what Lorgar does. Even when the infighting in the heretic forces is driven to a boiling point, Lorgar is given a glimpse. Lorgar realizes that Horus cannot bring this home, whether it be by intuition or by words of the gods. Lorgar realizes that Horus is going to fail. He is going to put everything in jeopardy, that the ultimate victory of the true gods, the gods who do not lie, is misplaced. Because he who is to be War Master is anything but. For how can he be Master of War when he is not even a master of himself anymore? So Lorgar, instead of biding his time, instead of playing cat and mouse, instead of pretending, instead of begging for forgiveness, instead of acting, instead of crying, instead of doing all this, he decides that chaos must survive, it must win. So what does he do? He makes a plan to remove Horus. And as always, he goes to others to seek it. For whereas others may slack, Lorgar will always stand. "You need to return to the war, Fulgrim," said Lorgar. His voice was low, but rolled across the throng like a pressure wave. Some of the mutants knelt, others twitched and vomited blood. A golden halo had unfolded from Lorgar's shoulders as his psychic force manifested in the warp-saturated air. Fulgrim squirmed, a hand running through Inkari's hair, while another picked at a wet red fruit from silver platter and held it out to the bloated demon. Lyak noticed that the exalted demon's face was a warped echo of Fulgrim's own, a fattened parody of the demon Primarch's soul-breaking perfection. Inkari ate the fruit and licked Fulgrim's fingers. "How long has it been, brother, since we talked? I mean, really talked. Swap stories about all those little conversational intimacies that are supposed to be the mark of a fraternal bond. Too long." He ran his tongue over his teeth. It was very pink. Maybe, but then again, maybe not. The war. After all, are we really brothers? Are we? Any more than the bacteria that spawn on the same rotten meat are siblings. It is difficult to grow emotion in a test tube, though I doubt that our father tried that hard. The balance of family life was hardly the top priority. Lorgar's face remained unmoved, his eyes unblinking. Lyak could feel the control washing off the Primarch as the halo grew brighter around his head. "You have been blessed and exalted, Fulgrim. Your nature is as the Dark Prince wills. I do not dispute that, but I am here to bring you back to the war you left incomplete." "Which war is that, brother dear?" said Fulgrim, running a finger over Inkari's cheek. "I lose track. Time is not what it used to be."
"The war against the Emperor. The war to take back the Imperium and give it to the gods."
"Oh yes, that war. I remember. How did it end again?" It did not. The end is close. That is why I am here, to call you back to it. For Horus? Said Fulgrim, watching Lorgar out of the side of his eyes as he licked the red fruit stains from his fingers. This war was never just about Horus. It is the victory of the primordial truth over our father's lies. Lies. I was always rather fond of lies, but no matter. What you have come all this way to say is that I should come back to your pitiful age, gather the creatures that the Emperor tore from my loins and... what? Fulgrim twitched a shrug, then continued in a voice that roiled and growled with false exultation. I should stand shoulder to shoulder with my beloved brother Horus, fight the fight of righteousness, see our lowly father cast down, weep tears of a rejected but avenged son. A murmur of laughter ran through the watching crowd of monsters. That's your job, brother dear. Are you refusing? Said Lorgar. Refusing is too strong of a word. The truth? The demon Primarch smiled as he waited the word. The truth is that I just don't care. No, you are lying, said Lorgar. No. Fulgrim fixed his gaze on Lorgar, the smile sinking into coldness. No, I am not. Red malice bloomed in Fulgrim's split pupils. I am sure you don't intend every detail of this meeting to be pathetic, Lorgar, but somehow, even without that intention, you have succeeded. Oh, Horus would be so displeased. Horus. Lorgar said the name carefully, rolling the sound like a wave turning over a stone. I am not here for Horus. You said something almost like that before, said Fulgrim, the sly grin hooking back into place. And I thought, that can't be. High and true Aurelian flirting with treachery? But it wasn't just flirting, was it? The light shone in the gleam of teeth behind his grin. Oh, do tell me more. Horus will fall, and then everything that we have done will be ashes. Mankind will not embrace the gods. The tyranny of our father's ignorance will continue. You want me to help you betray him? Oh, Lorgar, I didn't think you had it in you. Fulgrim uncoiled himself from Nakari and slithered down the side of the dais towards Lorgar. And then what? Will you take his place? Aww. Brother, sweet brother mine, you mean to take the crown and sit on the throne, don't you? Oh, you have become far less dull than I remember. Priest king of a realm where gods and mortals dwell in union, where ambition is righteousness, entropy sacred, excess embraced, and slaughter is devotion. I can see it. I can see it, brother. The cities of gold and bone, the worlds of ash. I can hear the screams and taste the pious smoke. Fulgrim closed his eyes and rolled his head back, nostrils flaring as he inhaled. It is not for me. This is for the gods, for mankind. Fulgrim swayed in place to then exhaled with a sigh. He lowered his head and opened his eyes. They were a flawless, wet black. He died on Davin, you know. He only lives by the power of the Four. If the gods abandon him, he will be no more. The echo finally faded. The light that blazes in place of his soul, gone. Like pulling the cables out of a machine. Victory in this war is greater than any individual. It is worth anything and everything. And you want me to what? Return to Horus' side and then plunge the dagger in before following you to Terra? The words still held an edge of mockery, but their tone was graver. Not just that, Fulgrim. You are the one with the divinity of the Dark Prince. You are the son of the false emperor and brother to Horus. Where you go, the tide of your god flows. Flattering, tempting, but, as I said, I just don't care enough to join in. His smile split wide across his face again. You really are a fool. The Dark Prince does not withdraw his favor from Horus, and you think you can lay low the War Master and then tame forces loyal to him? Hubris is a delicious sin, but one that will undo you if taken to excess. Take it from me. He will fall. He falls already. This is why it must be done. because he is too weak to see this crusade to its end. And you think that the others will bend their knee to you? They will bend their knee to the gods that own their souls. And the gods have brought me this insight so that I might do their bidding. They are all the gods' children, and the gods will this. Are you sure of that? Lorgar's face twisted into a smile. I have faith. Through faith, Lorgar would act. Horus, however, whether by paranoia, madness, or the twisting fates of the fickle Chaos Gods, would see through this, and in the end, Lorgar would be forced to abandon the crusade. But never the gods. For whilst others betrayed and warred, whilst they were scattered during the scouring, whilst they were lost throughout it all, whilst they killed each other, and whilst they questioned everything, Lorgar Aurelian and the bearers of the true word acted as the heralds of the undivided gods. Whereas others changed, the word bearers never faltered in their service. Lorgar never faltered in his service, because Lorgar had faith, because Lorgar believed the cause. Forever, now and always, he believed in what he did. The fourth and final point, and the conclusion of this video, is arguably the most important. That being that Lorgar was bloody effective. Many people call Lorgar the worst Primarch, but in truth, this is a blatant lie. This is the community placing their hate of Erebus mainly, but also the rest of the Wordbearer Legion onto Lorgar. For if he is the Primarch of the worst Legion, he must be the worst. But in reality, this is all just a figment of our imagination. Lorgar is the most effective Primarch of the heresy. He got everything he wanted and more. But this is not just my interpretation, because these are the facts. He was the first one to fall from chaos, and he kept it hidden for over 40 to 50 years, building up the entirety of the heresy from the ground up. The warrior lodges were him. He did that. He is the architect of the heresy. He caused the Ruinstorm. The Ruinstorm, mind you, is the same size as the Citridix Maledictum in Warhammer 40k, something that took Abaddon 10,000 years. Lorgar did in one afternoon. He wounded the Ultramarines. Not only did he wound them permanently. The only reason why they failed to kill the Ultramarines was because the Wordbearers didn't have a chain of command, because Lorgar did not intend for that to be the killing blow. He picked the worst of his legion, the most mentally hurt, the most crazy, 50,000 strong, and sent them in there to cause chaos. They should have killed the Ultramarines, but it's only because Lorgar didn't care about them that they didn't. He created the Shadow Crusade. The Shadow Crusade managed to harm Ultramar. It hurt it, despite the best efforts of everyone present. He was able to do that. He destroyed 2 of the 3 jewel worlds of Ultramar, Kalth as well as Armatura. He crippled Ultramar, the one place aside from the solar system itself that had the most prosperous and advanced civilization of all the Imperium. Lorgar Aurelian brought it to its knees, howling and crying. For the first time ever, the citizens of Ultramar knew horror and pain, and that name that ushered in that echo of madness and hell was Lorgar Aurelian. In the end, when Angron is about to die from the butcher's nails, he turns him into a demon Primarch. Not only does he save his brother, he turns him over fully into the corrupting powers of Khorne. Angron, one of the greatest monsters and terrors of the Imperium, was created by Lorgar. Whereas throughout the entirety of the heresy, every single legion, be they loyalist or traitor, is broken, beaten, bloodied, and destroyed. At the end of it, it is the word bearers that remain the most intact, the strongest and the most connected to the gods. It is them who are the most secure. It is them who are the most still the legion. It is them who are still the most united. For if the Urizen utters a call, the legion will summon. The Ecclesiarchy uses a bastardized version of his work. The Emperor is worshipped. The same thing that the Emperor punished him and his legion for all those years ago in Monarchia, the Imperium now worships as truth. Lorgar won. He is the undivided Chaos Prince. He has the favor of all and every god. He has his legion. The Imperium is in shambles. It follows the god that rejected him, the god that he preached, all the while he follows the true gods. Think about it. Lorgar got everything he wanted. The Emperor was cast low. He now worships the true gods. He was proved right. His work that was scorned by his brothers, by the Emperor, by everyone is now the basis of imperial and thus human civilization. Lorgar won. Lorgar wanted the guards of chaos to infect the Imperium. And lo and behold, there are chaos cults everywhere. Every single Primarch lost in the heresy. Every single Primarch hated what they became. All except Lorgar. Because while each and every Primarch had to plan, whilst they had to make decisions, whilst they politicked, whilst they lied, whilst they didn't believe in the cause, whilst they placed everything else besides what they needed to ahead of everything, Lorgar was honest. Lorgar didn't play games. Lorgar believed in what he did. Because people often ask to describe the Primarchs, what would you call Lorgar? And let me tell you right here and now, let me set the record straight. Lorgar Aurelian is when you take passion, you mix it with faith, and you give it purpose. Lorgar is success. Lorgar is the most effective Primarch that there has ever been. Because at the end of the day, Lorgar won the Horus heresy. Because goddammit, he got everything he wanted and more. Because you think about Primarchs in Warhammer 40k, and I can only think of one that is truly happy. And that is the Herald of the True Word, the Urizen of the Undivided, chosen herald of the chaotic ruinous powers, Lorgar Aurelian. And again, for one final time, in Lorgar's defense, he did win. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about this video. If you guys made this far, thank you so much. I really felt like making this video because recently with my content, I don't know, I've kind of been feeling that it's a bit lacking a little bit in regards to just, I don't know, it's been good, but I just haven't really been feeling like I've been giving you guys what you deserve. Probably just me and my perfection nonsense, but to everyone watching, everyone who tunes into these videos, I love you and I appreciate you, and I really hope that y'all felt this. This came from the heart, this came from the soul, and I really hope that my love for this topic and my passion for it made you love and appreciate me as a creator and the lore as a whole, which is the main point. But I don't know, I just hope that you guys feel good about this and you guys are having a good day, because I appreciate you, I love you, and I just don't want it to feel like I take you guys for granted. If that makes sense. I can be weird sometimes, so I'm sorry if this sounds odd. Yep, but ladies and gentlemen, let me know down below in your comments. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Love to hear your thoughts. But I want to say a massive thank you to you guys for watching, and even more massive thank you to my awesome members and patrons. Shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3, Mr. Draw of the Void, and Mr. Curtis Studies. Shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Warsmith.Fireheart, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Matthew Merrill, Mr. Sean IRL7, and Mr. Bullwin. Shout out to my Corporal tier members, Mr. Terrell the Math Kitty, Mr. Lord Rosarius, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, Miss Shauna Smithers, Mr. Gentle Salamander, and the Wench of Warhammer. And finally, certainly but not least, shout out to my awesome private tier members, Mr. Thomas Wells Lawns, Mr. Iva_SBW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Ayada, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Fortus Udum, Mr. CM Dine, Mr. Eric Mossero, and Mr. Dom Marek. Thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. You are indeed the... I guess this is the point where I say you'd be the ex to my Lorgar, but Lorgar didn't really have nobody. Like nobody. Homie was all alone. Sarge. But whereas Lorgar is lacking for a metaphor, good old Papa Vulcan has one, because you guys are the pyre god to me as the Vulcan boy, and I love you and appreciate you, and you guys are just amazing. Mwah! So jump day with memberships get a bunch of awesome benefits, but that doesn't matter because this will always be free, and you guys just being here is more than enough. I love you and appreciate you, and you're even amazing. Mwah! But ladies and gentlemen, I have been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching this video. Y'all make sure to stay honest out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers! You know, of all the traitor Primarchs for there to be gender bent NSW fan art about, the two that surprised me the most are Conrad, because Lorgar Conrad, but also Lorgar. Turns out that the 40k community is really into Catholic nuns. Do with that information as you wish.